Our live stream celebrating our 2000th student in the UK. Obviously a huge milestone for us. So it's great to be here. For those people, let's do a little clap. For those people who are joining online, thanks so much for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to have you here. I'm joined today with Zareen, our admissions manager, and she's going to be doing a little bit of a session in a minute, just giving a bit more information on bootcamp life, what you can really learn and what it can do for your career. And then I'm going to hand over to Craig after that. We're going to do a little Q&A so you can get to know Craig a little bit more. And then Craig is actually going to be doing a live code. So we're going to be learning how to build a landing page. So great for any first-time coders that are joining today. Okay, so we have got a good chance first to win some swag, which is some really exciting giveaways, courtesy of Tim. We have 10 swag bags. So I've got one here, and we've got some really exciting stuff in here. We've got a water bottle.
Very nice.
We've got a t-shirt and a notebook and a pen as well, the all-important pen. They write really well. So get excited about that. And we also have 50 £100 discounts for the bootcamp, which you can enter into a lottery for if you follow the link which is in the chat, which you should be able to see on your screen. You just plug in a few details and then we will be announcing the winner next week. So we are going to hand over to Zareen to give us some more bootcamp experience. So hi Zareen, how are you doing?
Anna. Thanks so much. I'm super excited to sort of give everyone some more insight into the Wagon life. So let's get into it.
Thanks.
Amazing. So in terms of our boot camps, we have got web development, data science and data analytics on offer to learn with us. And you may be aware we are an immersive tech training bootcamp and quite global as well. So as you can tell by the name, Wagon, we started back in the year 2013 with a group of 3 French guys on a mission to bring tech skills to creative individuals. Fast forward to today, we're in over 40 cities globally and counting, with an alumni of over 1,900, almost 20,000 students, including Craig, of course, which we are very proud of. And in terms of sort of startups, they have raised over $800 million towards their ideas, which is a great achievement, and we're proud of that. In terms of where our students go on to work, they are going on to the sort of big tech startups like the Googles, Meta and Facebooks, even to small startups and scale-ups that we know and love as well. It really just depends on their sort of career goals and what they intend to go on to do. And of course, you can check out the link on the slide there to find out more information about our graduates and what they go on to do. In terms of raising money towards their ideas, lots of our students go on to build their projects in the real world. So there's lots of different sort of projects that you can read into, all available on our website. And of course, a lot of them are existing in the real world. So it's always good to check out what they're doing today as well. So to join us on our bootcamp, we offer our web development and data science bootcamps 100% in person full-time, but also part-time in a hybrid format. So this is over 24 weeks, and that would be Tuesdays and Thursdays remotely from home, and then a Saturday in person with us on campus. Or you can tune in and join us on online 100% as well. And in terms of sort of the ratio, you'd always have 1 teacher per 7 students. So irrespective of your cohort size, you will have that one-to-one personal touch and support needed when you're learning a whole new skill. For our web development students, the individuals that tend to join us are looking to sort of upskill and learn new tech skills and actually change their careers. So they're coming from different backgrounds, so sales, hospitality, and even finance backgrounds, to have more technical skills and change their careers as well. Or they're hoping to change and launch their very own business, like lots of our previous alumni have gone on to do, which is always an option for them. Otherwise, if data is your thing, you can join us for our Data and Analytics Bootcamp, which recently launched in our London campus in January. And similar to the Web Development Bootcamp, this will help you future-proof your career, right? So as you're probably aware, a lot of industries, almost every industry is working with big data sets, and how can you work with them meaningfully if you have those skills. And of course, afterwards, they can go on to become data analysts, business analysts, or even working in sales and to use the data more meaningfully in that industry. Otherwise, you can join us for data science if you're wanting to go a bit more deeper into your tech skills and the data that you're working with. So with this, there are prerequisites for this bootcamp. And then, of course, after, you can specialize into becoming a data scientist, analyst, data engineer, or launch your very own startup, which is data-oriented, if that's your intention. As I mentioned, you can learn with us full time. So our 9-week in-person format is where you come in on campus and you've got a live lecture which takes place from 9 till 10:30. There is a small break in between. Don't worry, we do let you have some time to sort of get yourself together. And then, of course, you've got coding challenges that go on with your pair throughout the day. So from after that lecture up until 1 p.m, which is lunchtime, you've got pair programming to work on the core concepts that were covered in that day, in that lecture, to actually apply the theory that you've learnt. Then you've got lunch, which is 1 till 2 normally, and we usually have Pilates that take place, which is always fun, and tech talks that are involved during this time as well. So you're welcome to tune in and learn about what our alumni are up to, or hear from them. And then you've got pair programming again right up until 5 p.m, where you've got a live code session. So from 5 till 6, you'll be working on a coding challenge that a lot of your fellow students probably as well struggled with during the day, to actually work it out line by line and understand how to avoid making that same mistake, or how to understand that challenge so you know how to tackle it the next time it comes up, which it probably will quite quickly. And as I said, of course, you do have this option 100% online as well. So if you're unable to come in or unable to sort of commit to coming in every single day, there's an online version instead for you. So you have that flexibility. Our part-time hybrid format is 24 weeks. So as I said, it is Tuesdays and Thursdays remotely from home from 6:30 to 9:30. And then you've got a live session. So you come in 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on our London campus and get to know, of course, your teacher and your fellow classmates. And this option is really good if you're unable to sort of quit your job and you still want to be earning and learning at the same time. So a lot of the students that I speak with are joining us in this part-time format, and they're able to directly apply those skills that they learnt on, let's say, Thursday in their day job on Friday. So it's a great in-between option for you. Otherwise, if that Saturday is quite difficult for you to come in on campus, we've got a flex online part-time format. So this is, again, 16-hour commitment that we're expecting from you, but it's flexible. So you get to choose on the Tuesday or the Wednesday whether you want to tune into Module 1's live code session. And then for Module 2, you've got a choice of Friday or Saturday to tune into. So you don't need to have every Saturday as one of your sessions. You can opt for that Friday if you want to. And there's also a help desk available for you on the Mondays, Thursdays, every single day actually, which is great, of course, when you have sudden questions that come up whilst you're coding and want to sort of work it out with a teacher. So that's an option for you as well. So in terms of what you'll be learning with us, for our web development bootcamp, and actually every single bootcamp, you've got 40 to 50 hours of prep work for you to work with to ensure you feel quite confident and ready ahead of your first day with us. So for the web development bootcamp, this is really Web 101, how to feel quite comfortable with the core concepts such as HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then, of course, you'll be ready to join us for the first day. So in terms of the curriculum, once you are with us, you'll start with Ruby, which is a back-end programming language that we start with because, of course, it is beginner friendly and quite intuitive. So you can write loads of lines of code and actually pinpoint where the error is. So it's quite a forgiving language in that sense. And a lot of our students are then able to learn any other major programming language after the bootcamp once they've got this foundation in place. During the first few weeks, you also cover SQL or SQL and use VS Code as well. Then we go on to the design side and get a bit creative. So you'll be using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. And the point of JavaScript here is to work with creating more adaptive design to your website, so you don't have to continually refresh your web pages. Then you get to deploy your fully functioning web applications from scratch using Heroku and Ruby on Rails, where you wrap up everything you've learned from the front end to the back end and the database in between. And of course, it's a great achievement to have on your CV as well. And to sort of clarify, you're working through two product cycles. So one is an Airbnb clone where you've got buyers and sellers, and previous students have done it on selling artwork, yachts. So really just get creative with that. And then of course, for your final project weeks, this is an opportunity for you to sort of pitch an idea about something you're passionate about. So a previous student has created a web application about how do you make use of the books that you've got lying around at home that you're no longer using. You can sort of switch and swap them around with people in your area who have a similar taste to you. And that was something that was created from our students. And as you can see, you'll be using Figma as well. So you do get into the design side too, which is really a nice full sort of holistic skill set that you'll have to show for your skills after the bootcamp. For our data analytics bootcamp, as I said, you've got the prep work again to work through. This is an opportunity for you to sort of get comfortable with SQL, Excel, KPIs, what do they even mean, how to interpret them and work with them efficiently. And of course, you've got laptop set up here too, so you feel a bit more prepared ahead of your first day. Okay, now you've joined us on campus, great news. What you'll be covering is sort of how to work with Google Sheets, CRM systems as well. And the key point here is to understand what is the data set doing and how can you find the right data to work with. Then we go on to understanding how to extract the correct data and transform it into meaningful data for yourself so you can work with it. So that will be using tools such as SQL, Google Analytics, and Fivetran. We'll then learn how to use Power BI and data visualization to present and communicate our findings to a non-technical audience, which is really important in any technical team. And then finally, you'll learn how to use Python and machine learning to actually work and go in an advanced level, so working with bigger data sets as well. And similar to every bootcamp, you do have project weeks, so this can be about any sort of data analytics project that you're wanting to run, but we provide you with data from real startups as well for you to test this on from A to Z. Finally, our data science bootcamp is for those, as I said, who want more advanced skills. So there are prerequisites for this option. So you would need to be quite comfortable with Python. So beginner level, we usually recommend, and of course, comfortable with maths. So GCSE or A levels would be good to allow you to access the learning well. But on top of this, we offer Python Week 0. So this takes place literally 1 week before you join us on campus or online. And that is Monday to Friday, 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. So of course, you could still be working during that week pre the bootcamp and still be able to upskill with us ahead of the first day. So when you've joined us on our bootcamp, you'll begin by working with the programming language Python and learning how to build SQL queries to actually understand how to work with Jupyter notebooks as well. You'll then move on to decision science. So this is how to understand how to build hypotheses that you'll be testing, and then you'll actually use high functioning libraries such as pandas, NumPy as well. We'll then go on to machine learning and deep learning, and this will be a chance for you to use scikit-learn, TensorFlow as well as your tools, and actually understand the maths behind the data sets you're using. And with machine learning and deep learning, it allows you to work quite highly with your models and fine-tuning them. Finally, you'll get into machine learning engineering and your team projects, as I mentioned. So this can be using AI, creating a predictive model, or testing a hypothesis that you've been thinking about maybe in your previous work that you weren't able to use the tools with before. And now with the bootcamp, you're able to actually work with that and find the answers that you're looking for. Previous projects that I've really enjoyed have been about, let's say you've got an interview coming up, and a lot of our students do after they graduate. How do you know how you come across? And one of our project teams did created a tool which was all about analysing your facial expressions and ensuring that you're using positive language and presenting yourself in the best way possible ahead of course, the interview. Okay, so you've graduated from our bootcamp. Congrats. What comes next? So we have lots of career services on hand and available to you. In terms of a career week, so straight after the bootcamp, you've got 1 week which is dedicated to helping you navigate that scary space, which it can sometimes be. I think Craig will touch on that later. So this week is really just about upskilling you in navigating this. So how to prepare your LinkedIn profile, your GitHub, your portfolio, your CV, how to present yourself in tech interviews, how to prepare your tech CV as well, because this is usually something completely new from our students, because of course they're usually career switching, and also learning from our alumni as well. So lots of them come back onto our campus, which is really nice, and share their story with us and of course their tips and tricks. Last time we had Sarah Harding, one of our alumni, on campus with us, and Sarah O'Grady with us on campus, and she shared her sort of journey so far and gave us lots of tips and tricks on imposter syndrome and how to tackle that as well. And we had lots of positive feedback from our students. As I mentioned, within the career week, you've also got an opportunity to have a one-to-one consultation with Sophia, who's our careers advisor, and she is on hand with you even from the first day of the bootcamp. So you can book in a one-to-one with her and flesh out a game plan and understand which direction you're going in, what kind of companies you see yourself working at, and what kind of jobs suit your profile best and your strengths. In terms of the platforms we're using, so even from the first day of the bootcamp, you're using Slack, which is our internal communications platform, and you can subscribe to as many or as little channels as you'd like. So if you're keen to connect with our alumni who are in Berlin, potentially, you can collaborate with them on a project freelance if that's something interesting to you. Or we've got, of course, London alumni jobs, product and growth as different channels. And of course, you can tune into them as long as you are with us. So even after the bootcamp, you have infinite access to these channels. As I said, we've got an alumni community who are here to help you. So do lean on them for any support or questions you may have. Of course, it's quite tricky to get into a new world. So of course, they're on hand to support you should you need it. And of course, you can arrange a call with them and connect with them even after you graduate. To refresh the careers timeline, so during the bootcamp, you've got access to our alumni tech talks, lots of different individuals who come in on campus to share their stories, but also one-to-ones with our careers advisors. Then you've graduated. Careers Week is also a chance for you to upskill and prepare yourself for the world of work. And then, of course, after the bootcamp, you can have lots of one-to-ones, attend lots of our events, and we've got hiring partners that come in on campus or online to offer the adverts and jobs that they're hiring for currently. So the all-important information, when are our next dates? So our next full-time bootcamp will be running from the 17th of April up until the 16th of June. We're still accepting applications, so do send them across if you're keen to join us for this cohort. Again, for our online bootcamp, it is slightly later, from the 24th of April till the 23rd of June. And then, of course, we've got part-time from the 15th of April to the 30th of September. And then online part-time will be from the 22nd of April right up until 7th of October. And then full-time for July, we're already accepting applications. So if you're planning already that you may have, let's say, a notice period of a long period, you're welcome to sort of send in your application now for this cohort, and we can support you with your application. So how do you join us? All you need to do is submit a short application on our website. It doesn't take long at all. Really, it's a chance for us to see what's your sort of background, why you're keen to join us, and share a short motivation letter on sort of sharing those exact things. After you've been accepted or you've sent in your application, you'll be prompted to book in a 30-minute informal Zoom call with myself or one of our admissions team. And then after that, we'll have that informal Zoom call. You'll receive a quiz straight after for you to complete. And this normally takes around 45 minutes to an hour, so not too long at all. Once you have submitted your quiz, you will receive an outcome on your application from our team within 24 hours. So we are pretty speedy in getting back to you, because we appreciate it's an exciting step in your life and you want to sort of hear back quite quickly. In terms of financing, the bootcamp fees are $7,400 for our web development and data analytics bootcamp. For our data science, it is $7,900, and then for our online and flex options for web dev and data, it's $7,400 again, and then data science $7,900. If you're hoping to go for the complete flex option, it is $8,500 for web dev and $8,900 for data science. We appreciate there are lots of different ways to pay for the bootcamp, so we have got lots of financing options for you. You can go for the upfront option, and if you do, we can apply a 5% discount for you, so you can save around $370 if it's for the web dev, and that will of course be welcomed hopefully. And then the 6-month installment payment plan is for those who are hoping to spread the fees and, of course, potentially still be earning if you're joining us part-time. So it helps you spread the costs. That would be £2,000 deposit. Then the remaining balance is split into 6 equal monthly instalments. And there is a £100 management fee associated with this, which is something to note. Then we've got 3 alternative funding options. So NOMA is a 0% interest fee loan, so you can borrow as much or as little as you'd like for your financing. I've had previous students who had some savings already, and then they wanted to sort of borrow a little bit from NOMA, and that helped have less to pay back, which is great. Lendwise is a tuition fee loan, which helps you spread the cost after the bootcamp. And then finally, StepX is more of a income shared agreement. So you could pay them $1,500 up front, or split that into 3 installments of $500 if you like, as long as it's paid back, of course, before your bootcamp graduation date. And then fast forward, you graduate, you land a job and earn a minimum of $24,000. That is when StepX would start to take back the payments. So it helps you, of course, learn and study while you earn. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Serene.
Whizzed through that, didn't we?
That was amazing. No, there's so much information in there, but no, I appreciate you went through the time and all the details. Thank you so much.
Of course, pleasure.
I've got a couple of questions for you. Is that all right?
Please, tell me. Go ahead.
If you could summarise the bootcamp experience in 3 words, what would you say?
Life-changing.
Okay, big word.
Collaborative.
Okay.
Challenging.
Great.
And these words are not made up. I've heard them from lots of our students who shared it. I don't know, Craig, if you agree with some of the words. Go on.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'd add one more, and that's community.
Community.
Nice. We have an amazing community at the Wagon.
You're still using the Slack channels?
Yeah. I'm in the Slack every day. To be honest.
You can't escape. No, definitely.
No.
Making the most of those connections. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and as a teacher as well, but also making what I hope will be lifelong friends. Yeah. You know, through the course and through teaching as well. Definitely. Like constantly speaking to people on our Slack and seeing interesting things on the alumni channels too.
Great, cool. We'll definitely go into that a little bit more in a minute. Serena, I've got one more question for you before we move on as well. Say somebody is really struggling with which bootcamp to choose. You know, they're on the fence, they can't decide. What's your hot tip for them?
Sure. I think the key thing is, and this is what we tell all of our students, is to reflect on what is the outcome you want to achieve afterwards, because that will help you gain insight into what's your actual purpose with joining us. If it's really tricky to figure out, and we appreciate it is, book in a call with us, because of course that's why we're here, and we're happy to support you in finding out which one's right for you. I've had previous students who applied, interviewed for, let's say, data science, and then later on were like, oh no, web development actually sounds much better and something in line with my goals, and they wanted to build a product afterwards. So it did sound like a better fit.
Yeah, so you can really help people make that final decision.
Exactly.
Great.
We're here for that.
Great. Thank you so much. That was
Pleasure.
really insightful. Cool. Okay, I'm just going to say a quick hello to those people who have just joined us recently on the live stream, that is. Thank you so much, and welcome to anybody new on the live stream. Just to recap, we are here celebrating having hit more than 2,000 students here at Wagon in London, of course. Very exciting, I know. And that means that all of those 2,000 students are part of our much wider pool of more than 19,000 students we've now hit for Wagon globally. So that's in the 40 plus cities that you can find Wagon all around the world. So it's a really exciting time for us. We are growing from strength to strength. And we are here today just with getting some more information from Zareen here, our admissions manager, who works with all of our students nearly that come through the door, who are changing their lives by learning to code, joining our boot camps. And really, what we're really focusing on is developing our students, not only professionally, but personally as well. So you've heard Craig touch on that all-important community. And I'm now going to be handing over to Craig. So say hi, Craig. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Great. Hey. So I've got a few questions for you because I think it'll be great for those that have joined us to get to know you a little bit better. Obviously, I know you as one of our superstar teachers at Wagon, but I know that you've done the boot camp as well, and there's obviously so much more to you as well. So do you want to take a couple of minutes just to introduce yourself? Tell us, what brought you here today?
So my name's Craig, as we've covered, and I used to be a music teacher.
Cool.
And a musician, and obviously we all got hit with COVID, and working in schools and in venues, and all of those got shut. So I had some time to reassess a few things and think about what's going to challenge me and what I can push forward through in life. And eventually I decided I wanted to become a developer. And I started doing some research into boot camps and decided on Wagon. Did the course. Your Amazing Careers team hooked me up, and now I work for an amazing company, WeShape.
Great.
That's a brief overview of me.
Wow, thank you. I didn't realise that COVID, the pandemic, really sort of changed that track for you. How did you find? Firstly, a couple of questions. How did you find yourself wanting to be a developer, and how did you find the shift going from something as creative as music to tech?
That is a really good question. So as we all found ourselves with not much to do, I'm quite a restless person. So initially it was finish Netflix, did that quite quickly.
Every single episode.
Exactly. And then it was like, what do I do next? And I started to think about, okay, what can I do? And I thought, I'm going to study law.
Okay.
So I started doing online law courses.
Yeah.
Started doing online law courses, and then I was speaking to a friend who suggested that I have a look at programming, and got me in contact with her son, who had done one of Wagon's competitors courses.
Right. Okay.
And I spoke to him. He kind of told me his transformation, which sounded really amazing. And the music company that I was working for have a digital team. They have a digital aspect to their product. And there was 3 Wagon graduates in the digital team.
Great.
So I bounced from law, and then I started studying data science online, and I did that for about 6 months.
Oh,
interesting.
Just all self-led.
Yeah. And I got quite far with that, and I had a conversation with one of the seniors in the digital team, and she just started asking me a few questions about sort of what I wanted and the direction I wanted to go. And at the end of this conversation, she's like, have you thought about web dev?
Yeah.
And I hadn't really, I was quite resistant to it. And eventually I like doing more research online on the future jobs prospects for a data scientist or a web developer. I realized my personality was more suited to web development.
Great.
And and from there I sort of didn't look back.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. The head of digital there, amazing man. He just made a chat, and we use Teams at the old company. He just made a chat and put all the Wagon developers in there and said, ask them all the questions you want.
Great.
Wow.
That's so good.
He must have believed in you then, if he's already like setting up with these resources. Really nice.
Yeah, they were so supportive. They were really, really supportive. So endlessly thankful to all of that team. Some of them I still work with at the Wagon because they're TAs and teachers. So it's really nice that community, and coming into the Wagon, I had support of the Wagon grads as well.
Yeah. So interesting how Wagon grads find each other. Like this isn't actually the first time I've heard this story where someone's like, yeah, I got a job where somebody else from Wagon is actually at. So it's funny. I think that, it gets recommended, doesn't it? Yeah. Interesting. Also great. Interesting to hear that you started off sort of self-teaching and then decided to move to a boot camp. Was there anything in particular that, led you to want some more in-person training?
Yeah, it was time more than anything.
Okay.
Like the life of if you know anyone who's a teacher, they are exhausted all the time.
Yeah.
So teaching and then doing gigs on the side is, so a couple of evenings a week and a Saturday traveling wherever. And then you think, I need to find time to study on top. I'm working towards that job. And I interviewed for a few jobs as well, and didn't quite make the cut. And it's like, what do I need to do?
Yeah.
And that's commit 100%. So I decided I'm going to quit my job. And if you know many teachers, you might know that the money they're on's not great.
Yeah.
And
no impact.
It's minimal impact. Yeah. And it's quite a scary decision coming from that and going, right, I'm going to quit my job. I have to believe in myself and hopefully land something before it runs out and I have to call my mum. So I just made that decision. I was like, I have to commit to this now.
Yeah.
I've done so much work. I've got to final rounds of interviews, but I don't quite have it yet. And the feedback that I got from the Wagon grads at the company that I was in was just like, not only is it quality education, but it's a great community and it's a family. So like they sold it. I was actually, before I spoke to them, I was heavily leaning towards a different boot camp.
Wow.
Interesting.
Tell us who they are.
Tell us.
It begins with an M. Right? So
making a note.
So I was really leaning towards their boot camp. And but after speaking to the Wagon grads, I completely lost interest because like the passion, you feel the passion of people, right? And like the passion that I got back about that this is the place to be, I couldn't really consider anywhere else.
Yeah.
And then I did my interview and the rest is history, really.
It's beautiful.
Wow. So remind me, when exactly did you do your boot camp?
From April 22 to June 22.
Okay, yeah. So about a year ago now.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And tell us a bit about what you've been doing since then.
So since then, I've been working for a company called WeShape, which is a tech consultancy. And they started a really wonderful scheme called the WeShape Tech Pathway to help bring diversity into tech and sort of highlight there's a lot of amazing and diverse talent. I think we all have that image of what a developer looks like. Yeah. And the reality is, especially when you walk around places like the Wagon, that's just not the case. Like an image doesn't denote talent, and the Tech Pathway is really working towards that in partnership with the Wagon to sort of bring that attention, and the opportunities that are coming soon and that have been afforded to me have been amazing. So they've contracted me to a really cool company called Uptime Labs.
Cool.
And we build simulation software for incident managers to help prepare any business's response to an incident and hopefully like improve your uptime.
Nice. Cool. Thank you. What was the most difficult thing during your boot camp, and what really helped you push through?
That's a really good question.
He's ranking his rate. There's so many challenges.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges. Like, I think what naturally comes to mind is, it's challenging learning a new topic every single day. But that's not the thing that stands out to me the most. Like, it's a huge life change and that brings a lot of like mental stress. You know, and it's a long day. And for me, I live quite far away from the Wagon as well, so I had a long day and I had 2 hours either side of that as well. So actually, like whilst I was doing the course, mentally it was probably one of those times it was quite difficult for me, but the community that you have at the Wagon, the bond you make with the people that you're studying with, like everyone's going through it, everyone's made these huge life decisions. If you've stopped what you've been doing, if you're going to stop what you're doing for 3 months, like you've made a huge decision. So like connecting with a bunch of people, all going through the same thing sort of gets you through that, regardless of like how hard, or I mean everyone's going to find this course hard. There's a lot of growth to happen, but you know, some people might take to it easier than others, but you'll all experience that same transformative journey, and it's really nice to do that with people.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's such a nice insight. Thank you. Going back a little bit, I'm thinking about you know, what you did before. You said you worked in the music industry and things like that. And actually, so I was looking the other day at how to improve my logical thinking. You know, I've done a little bit of coding myself recently and wanted to think about how I can apply that sort of logic to sort of more areas of my life and continue learning a bit of coding as well. And what was really interesting was when I Googled it, what they said was the best way to develop logical thinking was to actually do something creative like music. And I just was wondering if, you know, you've managed to use your background in music at all, or did that help you at all in any way, learning to code, or if it sort of helped you even just unwind, or, you know, how have you managed to combine that sort of quite artistic background with a new career in tech?
I always find this a difficult question, because people do ask me, people say, oh, like music and coding, very similar. And at first I found it difficult to find the similarities. But what I realized over time is actually anything creative is problem solving. So, and with things that are stereotypically creative, like, you know, art as in painting or music or something like that, it's you're solving problems to very open questions, like, you know, how do I write a love song? So you can write a love song a million different ways, and every time you do something, you're coming up with a solution to the next part. The next word is like, how do I capture someone's heart? You know, how do I tell the story with my guitar or my drums or whatever? So it kind of boils down to problem solving for these really open questions and quite spiritual questions. And actually, when you start looking at coding, it's a really human thing to do. How do I solve the problem of people having access to music? Spotify, you're solving a human problem. How do I help people connect on a human level? Facebook, you know, how do I then bombard them with adverts? Also Facebook. But these are not the opinions of the Wagon. But still, like, especially since I've now got into my job, everything we're worrying about the user. And before we start talking about code, we talk about people and how we can best serve people. And I think that's where that similarity really comes across. Like, you're problem solving, but you're problem solving for people. And actually, I've found the teaching really helpful. Like, if you ever really want to think about logical thinking, ask a young child to do something you know how to do really well.
Oh my gosh.
And you'll realize all the steps that you haven't thought about for years. And you say, oh, go and get that cup. And then
It's
they
like autopilot.
run in circles around the room. And you have to be really clear about this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing. And a lot of coding is like that. You have to, a computer just does what it's told. So if you're not specific enough or whatever, you then, that having that limitation, having that feedback of, oh, it's not done that thing because I actually didn't tell it. You learn quickly to, oh, I've got to put all these steps in place to get there.
It's like training the trainer, you know, it's that ever evolving problem or challenge, I guess. Oh, that was great. Thank you. I get asked so many times from people from an arts background. I'm from a bit more of an arts background myself, you know, about making this shift and things. So yeah, that was really good. Good bit of information. Thank you. I think what it would be great to hear a bit more about. So, I mean, there's always a lot of very different people on the bootcamp as well. So can you tell us a little bit more about maybe the people that you met during the bootcamp and, you know, how you worked with people from very different backgrounds? And
So long ago now. So much has happened. Yeah. So when you arrive, you sort of like, it's very much like not first day of school, but maybe first day of uni. So you arrive, everyone's in this like space. There's
Looking
this energy.
around,
Nervous energy. Yeah.
You don't know what courses people are on, so you sit down at a table and just sort of like sort of introduce yourself. And I was really lucky that I sat down on a table with 2 people from my batch and 2 people from the other web development batch at the time. Who I saw the man I'm about to talk to. I saw him today actually. Oh, cool. We had lunch together. A Portuguese fella, and he'd come from a customer service background, working in high-end hotels and warm energy, like really warm. Forgive me. Really wonderful, and like we have like differences, you know. Sure. But at the same time, we really bonded, and I'd done like quite a lot of study beforehand, so we're able to support each other. And then, you know, fast forward 6 weeks when we're working on different topics, he took to quicker than me. Yeah. I'm going to him going like, how did you do this? Help me out.
Give me your insights, come on.
Exactly. And we had different people from like different religious backgrounds. Like some people had done computer science degrees, so they had really solid like coding backgrounds. Yeah. Some people were parents. We had someone who was pregnant on our course, so she was going through going through this like fantastic journey, and like we're all
championing her.
Yeah. We found out like a few weeks in, and we're like, oh my god, no way, this is crazy. And then I was like really trying to get her to name her baby after me, but
obviously,
alas, didn't work.
No, didn't happen. Didn't even give you a middle name. No,
nothing.
Gutted for you.
Fair enough. I'm sure maybe it was like a family member or something. I don't know. But yeah, so many walks of life in one space, but also we had a real sense of camaraderie. So a real sense of everyone struggling, everyone needs support. And we came to that, you know, as you said in the sort of summary of what happens in the courses, you pair program through the day. But you don't, it's not strictly pairing. We actually, sometimes you end up in a group, you know, people with the same problems work together, or someone who's doing like really well in that particular moment will go and support other people. We have TAs on the course, but we're also a cohort, we're also a team. So we're all, you know, lifting each other up along the way, which is really nice to see. And like as people do better in certain areas, like some topics suit certain people's thinking, so like the front end part really suits creative people, you know, and sort of the back end stuff is super logical. There's a correct answer for everything. You need to give the correct output, even though there may be multiple ways of doing it. That suits other sorts of people. So when, you know, I got to the front end part of it, even though coming from a musician creative sort of background, and I was just like terrified. This is so visual. Oh my god. So like I really got to lean on other people in the course, which was really nice. So yeah, like I don't know if that really answers the question, but like
it sounds like you discovered new things about yourself as well, like new ways to think about problems, because if you were creative before, maybe you were just relying on those skills to help you, but maybe it was quite challenging in the end, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. I don't know.
Both.
I've always struggled with, getting very like therapy session, but like the identity of being a creative person. Like I've never been too sure about it. Like I like music. I like to play music. I like to, you know.
You're good at it as well, right? So
I try my best. But then I see people who are just like pour out songs and pour out art and stuff like that's a creative person. However, I also think if you have a problem and you come up with a solution, that's creativity in its essence, regardless of whether you're wearing a lab coat, you're sat at a laptop, playing a guitar, doing art. So somewhere along the line, we're all creative.
I definitely agree. And I think that, you know, from watching people's projects at the end of the boot camps, you know, you just see so much creativity pouring through. And even for those people, I think that don't feel naturally creative, they have at the end of the day worked in a team to produce something creative. And I think that can really unleash something in people. I've definitely seen people just grow so much over the 9 weeks that they're with us. Was there anything in particular that really surprised you about the bootcamp? Maybe more specifically about the course. I know we sort of talked about your learning journey, your personal growth a bit.
I think the freedom of it. Okay. I think Wagon leaves you with a lot of responsibility to guide your own learning journey. Okay. I sort of thought, before I came, I was like, oh, it's going to be like school. I'm gonna come in and they're going to say, you need to know X, Y, Z things and do that and so on and so forth. But actually, that's not the case. It's like Wagon provides you with the tools, the support. You can use as much or as little as you need to get to the end point.
Yeah.
But it's very much more like university. And that freedom means that if you work in a certain way, you can work in that way, and there's no one's forcing you to do it like in school. Do this, do your homework. Write an essay on this topic, and you're not an essay person. You can go and speak to someone. I would raise tickets, and which for those of you who haven't done Wagon, is the system for like getting a teacher to come and give you some help. I'd raise a ticket, and I'd be like, I've done this. I don't fully understand it. And some people like. Just having that conversation was massively helpful for me. Yeah. Whereas other people may want guidance, other people would be reading documentation, and they'd work that way. I remember being paired with someone who she was just so diligent, and I'd done this challenge before she'd done it, and I was like, oh sweet, I'm on to the next one now. And I checked in with her, and she showed me how she'd done it, and I'd written like 5 or 6 lines of code to solve this problem, and she'd taken the time to read everything properly, and it was one line, and it was it looked so good, and it made sense. It was really readable because she was using the right methods, which are like reusable bits of code for non-coders listening. That I just looked at it, and I was like, I learned something really big here, and it wasn't from one of the teachers, it was from watching how someone else chose to learn. So, and I think that's a huge opportunity to like sit and learn with 30 or 40 other people and actually be able to see other people's approaches. It's not something you do often. We all go and do our jobs, and we're dead focused on that, and have very little crossover in other people's learning processes. So it's really, really, really amazing.
Nice. Gosh, I wonder what she's doing now. I could learn from her. Yeah, definitely.
She is a developer.
Is she?
Oh, amazing.
Hey, yeah, okay, I'll have to track her down. Okay, I've got one more question for you, and then I'm going to ask you to do some more talking. We're going to jump into that landing page workshop we've been waiting for. Do you have any advice for learning tech skills?
Yes, for learning tech skills. Don't feel like you have to know everything. It's great. It's the number one thing. Like, I got told this by so many people along the way. I got told by people in interviews. But like, I Google stuff all day, every day. Don't overwhelm yourself with like, I need to be a full stack developer. I need to know Node.js. I need to know React. I need to be able to, I need a Nest.js and all this framework, Ruby on Rails, so on and so forth. I've got to have all these skills. First and foremost, you need to be a great person, and then you need to have good conceptual knowledge. Then you need to be an exceptional Googler. Right?
Yeah, key skill that.
And then use your network for help. Like, no one achieves anything without help. So get used to asking for help, get used to communicating, because even after a boot camp, even after a computer science degree, you still won't go into a company and build their platform. You're going to help with small things, and to do those small things, you're going to have to ask for help. So don't overwhelm yourself. Just be great. Just be you, and you'll be grand.
Amazing.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Craig. That was really nice insights. So I think we are now going to jump into the landing page workshop. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Great. And I hope everyone that's online is getting ready as well. We are going to take a short break, and we'll be back in a moment.
My name is Rokas Agunas. I'm a Wagon graduate, and I'm a software engineer.
What did you enjoy most about the Wagon online course?
For me, it was the peer programming sessions. I really enjoyed working with different individuals from around the world. Everyone's approach to challenges was unique, which meant you could learn and adapt from each other.
Turn me to the right.
For me, it was online teaching support. There are always teachers available to support me at any time of the day. I can just message them on Slack, or we can jump on a Zoom call. They will explain the concept where I find this challenging, or they will help me to debug, which potentially saves me hours if I have to solve it by myself.
I really enjoyed the online learning platform because you have everything that you need to complete the bootcamp all in one place. Because the materials are online, you can revisit the content whenever you need, during and after the bootcamp.
What I enjoyed the most were the live lectures. I got to learn from experienced developers from the comfort of my own home, as if I would be in the classroom. Plus, if I miss anything, I will just go back and watch them online.
The highlight for me were the final projects, where as a group of 4, we built a web app to solve a real-world problem that we deeply cared about. We were acting as if we were a real software engineering team, which helped us massively when we were looking for jobs after the bootcamp. To the right.
Hello and welcome. If you've just joined us, you've joined at the perfect time. This is going to be really cool. So the aim of the game today is we're going to build a landing page. So a landing page, by definition, is just like a single page. Often these are used for like advertisement for a specific product. So say you see, I don't know, some leggings that you really like. There'll be a specific there'll be a specific page just to like draw you into that. But this is really free. So you could consider this as something that you could use for just like a simple profile page or something like that. After we've been through all of this, feel free to personalize. And I'd love it if some of you guys were to go ahead and personalize, share with us on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever your work. So we're going to be using a few different tools today. We'll be using HTML, CSS, we'll be using a code editor. And the goals are for you to understand how a website displays on your computer. Goal number 1. How we add structure to our website and how we design our website. And hopefully by the end of this, we'll all have a beautiful landing page to share with our friends. Yeah, let's get stuck in. So there's a little bit of setup to do. Step 1, if you haven't signed in on the Learn platform, please do. If you head to the comments, someone will be frantically typing in instructions for the URL for the Learn website and the code so you can sign in. It'll add you onto a batch. You'll come in. Oh, I don't have any batches. Wonderful. You should see a page similar to this with less courses, and you should just see Web Development Sprint. Click on Continue, and you'll come to this page. You can go ahead down to the bit that says Your Turn and Step 1, Getting Started. And there's a few instructions here. So number 1, install Chrome web browser. If you don't use Chrome, take a couple of seconds just to download that and install it, just so you're using the same tools as me and you're not guessing like what the equivalent is in Safari or something like that. The next one, we're going to diverge from the plan here. Rather than Sublime Text, we're going to use something called VS Code, and I'll show you where to download that, or Visual Studio Code is the full name. And then the final thing we're going to do to set up is download the boilerplate, which is basically we've given you the basic code you need to get started and some images, so you don't have to spend time looking for images, and you can get straight into coding and adding your content rather than doing all the setup stuff. But really not too much. Forgive me. Okay, so I'm going to presume everyone's either got or installed Chrome. VS Code, we can find it by just Googling VS Code. You'll see a lovely response like this. I'll say download Visual Studio Code. Choose your platform. So if you have a Windows computer, click Windows here. If you have a Mac. If you have a Linux, one of these. And you can see different types. So I don't know much about Windows, but if you have a Mac, Intel chip is probably any Mac older than 2019. Apple Silicon is if you have an M1 or M2 Mac, and Universal is Universal, I suppose. And then you can click download and install. I've already got it installed on my computer, so we'll get back to the challenges. And the next thing you want to do is download the boilerplate. This will just download, add something to your downloads. It's a zip folder. And what I want you to do is find that in your downloads. Hold on, let's go to my desktop. Wonderful. Find that in your downloads, unzip it, and drop that on your desktop. And we'll rename it now from the standard to whatever we want to call it. So I'm going to call it 2000 landing page. Awesome. Cool. So now you're set up and ready, and I'll quickly show you. Once you've downloaded VS Code, you can drag and drop this into VS Code and you'll see it in your Finder. So this is your code editor. I'll tell you a little bit more about code editors in a second, but we can just drag and drop that into VS Code and you'll see lovely that all your images, files, so on and so forth are here arranged for you. And we'll get a little bit more into the significance and importance of that in a second. So we're going to do a web development sprint. If you've never heard the term sprint before, it is a term used in agile methodology, which is just a way of working. It's a workflow and working in periods of a set, like a short time period, setting some goals, achieving those, reflecting on it, and then starting another short time period to do the next thing. So this is just a little bit of tech workflow terminology, or not necessarily strictly tech, but a lot of tech teams work with this methodology. This page says welcome class, so welcome. Okay, so we're going to be building this web page. So we'll be building a clone of this. And like I said, at the end of this, please, please, please take some time to personalize this. You can change the text, you can change the images, you can make it something that's useful and something that you're connected to yourself. This could be like a personal website linked to your interests, something like that. But at the end of this, we should have a page that looks pretty much this. So here we go. So first thing is, how does a website work? So when we visit a website, we type in our URL, as you can see here, wagon.com, and then we get given some information. Beautifully designed, wonderfully delivered, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. We have our client, which is our browser, and we have somewhere else, or not necessarily somewhere else. In today's example, our own laptop will be our own server. But most of the time, if you go to Wagon's website or Facebook or Twitter or whatever, you're asking Facebook servers to give you some information and display it in your browser, which is the client. So you have a server and a client. And this is really easy to liken to a restaurant. So if you go to a restaurant, you're going to sit down, you're going to ask your server for something. That server's going to go to the kitchen and say, "Hey kitchen, can I have steak tartare, please?" And
good choice.
and they're going to bring that back to you and present it. And that's exactly what we're doing with websites. We type in our URL, that goes to the server retrieves that information and sends it back to your browser. Hopefully that makes sense. And in our case, it'll be index.html, which is going to be our landing page. Okay. So we use a few tools whilst we're doing this. So we have our code, our HTML code. We work on that with our text editor. So here that you can see a logo for Sublime Text, which is another perfectly good text editor. I prefer to use VS Code. It has a lot of useful extensions and stuff, and I'll be using a couple today, and I'll tell you what they are, just to speed up my process and just to make this a little bit smoother. But worry not, I'll make sure you guys know exactly like the simplest way to do things. So you have your text editor work on your code, and and then you have a browser. So for us, it's going to be Google Chrome. And your server could be somewhere where your website is hosted online. So somewhere like GitHub, which is a repository for code, but they also have a deployment service, which if you look in the optionals on Learn, you can see as you extend this, it's a free place for you to deploy your website. So you can share it with us on LinkedIn later once you've done your amazing personalizations. So we have a text editor. For us today, it's not Sublime Text. It's going to be VS Code. And we can use that to write our code. We have a browser, Google Chrome. And this helps us navigate to our websites and display pages. We have a hosting service, GitHub, which if you want to go onto the optionals, gives you really clear instructions on how to deploy your website on GitHub and be able to share that with people. Cool. And we've gone through the setup already. So let's jump into HTML basics. A web page has two major elements. So the first element is content and structure, and that is what HTML is for. It'll only give you content and structure. So if you are as old as me, you may remember dial-up internet and slow loading web pages, and it was just like a list of information with square images, and everything was very, very slow. If you just use HTML, things look like that, a little bit like a newspaper. And for design, we have CSS. The CSS is a way of applying rules to the HTML to display them in more appealing, more intuitive, and more user-friendly ways. So content and structure for HTML, and that's what we're going to have a look into first. So basic syntax for HTML. We have a HTML tag. So you like an arrow either side and the name of an element. And then we have a closing tag. The difference between the two is just that / before the name of the element. And in between, you'll have some content. Most HTML tags have an opening tag and a closing tag. And like I say, an opening tag doesn't have the /, the closing tag does have the /. You can add extra information to an element, and we call these attributes. So if you can see here, if you follow my mouse, you have the name of the element, and then we have a name of an attribute, an equal sign, and in speech marks a value that may have. So let's look at an example of what that might look like. Excellent. And again, you'd still have a closing tag and some content in between. So for example, here we have an A tag, which is for a link. A is short for anchor, and href. And as I'm sure you can guess, knowing that this is a link tag, href refers to the URL that link may go to. So when you click on a button on a website, it'll be an A tag most of the time with a href of whatever the URL is that you're going to go to. Wonderful. And then if you want to display some text on that button, like in between the opening and closing tags, you'd put the name. So this would be a button of, at the moment, no design with the words Wagon. Excellent. So there's a HTML skeleton that we're going to talk about. So any HTML page will start with this bit of text, doc type HTML, and this informs the browser what the document is. This is a HTML document. And then each web page has an opening and closing HTML tag. This is the start of our HTML. This is the end. And everything in between is our website's content. There are two major parts to each page. We have the head, and the head is the page's intelligence, the metadata. And this is not displayed on the page. So this can be things like the title of the website. So in fact, let's have a look at some examples. If I can find it better. So if we have a look at Wagon's website, wagon.org, I believe. lewagon.com. So if we go to lewagon.com, you can see that we have a title for the website. This would be described in your metadata. You have a little image here, which is called a favicon. This is also described in your metadata. If you go to Google and type in Wagon, you see all this information about the Coding Bootcamp. Wagon Coding Bootcamp, change your life, learn to code. Let's have a look at Wagon's website. So if you right-click, and some of you might have right-clicked on a website before and seen view page source inspect. What does this mean? Well, if we click inspect, this opens up some developer tools, and we can investigate. I'll try and make this a little bit bigger. If I do control, it's not getting any bigger. So if we have a look in the head, can we see right here, meta content, change your life, learn to code. Wagon is ranked as the world's best coding bootcamp. It's enabled thousands. So this is described in the head, in the metadata of our website. Okay. In the next part is the body, and this is where we add our content. Everything in the body will be displayed on that page. So, in the head, we could have the page's title, name, description, char set, which describes what letters. So, for example, there are different char sets for different languages, and it's important that your website recognizes the character sets. For example, if you have certain accents in a particular language, the website needs to know that. It's also helpful for Google. There are lots of meta tags that you can use for search engine optimization. This is really important stuff, and also connecting CSS for styling. Wonderful. And outside of the head, we move into the body, and we're going to talk about headers. So these are really, really important. Let's have a quick look at an example here. I'm going to make another page just to smooth this out a bit. Excellent. So if we have a look at our example page, you can see we have a title here, and this is what we would consider to be a heading or a header. We have another header here, and here we have some more headers. So these are like the important bits of information on the page. The bits that we want to stand out are all headers. We can express this in our code with HTML tags h1, the content in between, so whatever we want that title to be, and h1 would be our biggest, most important header on the page, heading on the page, potentially the name of a company, or the name of a product, or the purpose that a user might be there. And then as the numbers increase, the priority of that decreases. So main title, subtitle, select section title, section subtitle, going on to H2, 3, 4, etc. We can use P to describe a paragraph. Any long form content, really, you'd put in a P, and you can standardize that sizing. And there's this wonderful Latin example for you here. If anyone reads Latin, get involved, let me know what that says. We can emphasize certain things. So, for example, if we had a paragraph and we wanted to emphasize a word, we could use the strong tag to make something bold. So clearly a consecutive is very important. So here this would display on your screen as some bold text amongst the standard text. And then we come on to something, this is really important. These are used a lot on nearly every website, possibly every website. Unordered lists and lists in general. So first we'll talk about unordered lists. The unordered list is described with this tag UL, which stands for unordered list, and nested inside of that we have list items, LI. And we can add as many as we need to describe the things that we'd have. So this is my shopping list for tomorrow. And so you have UL, open and closing tags, and then inside it, you'd have LI and each element that you'd have. You can also have ordered lists. And as you can imagine, an unordered list would be displayed as bullet points. An ordered list would be displayed as numbers, so index. And if you're familiar with using something like Word or any text editor, we've all like swapped between like that with that anxiety of like, should it be bullet points? Should I number this? So on and so forth. We can still do this with our HTML, and that would be OL for ordered list, but the same list items inside, as many as you like. Now, earlier on, I said most HTML tags have to have an open and closing tag. There are exceptions, and an image tag is one of those exceptions. So we have an image, it has an attribute source, src, and here you would put the path to the image. And by path, I mean the route from where the folder, where the file that we're writing in is, to where the image is stored. So from the file we're in, here it's saying we go inside a folder called images, and inside that folder we find logo.png, and it will display whatever logo.png is. We have a second attribute called alt. This is a really important attribute because it's used for a couple of main really important functions. One is for screen readers. So this is a description of what the image is. So if you need a screen reader, this is what the screen reader would read out to you. But also this describes to any search engines or anything like that that's automatically reading the website what this content is, and it helps prioritize like the rationale of this content. Obviously these algorithms are really smart now, so the better you're describing what's on your page, the better your website is ranked and received. But yeah, for that accessibility side, this is massively important. And if you get into search engine optimization, you can learn a lot more about the importance of this too. Cool. So we're going to get into the first exercise now. We're going to add some HTML content to our website. So if we have a look at your turn section on Learn, you can click on number 2. And we're going to open our index.html file. And I'll quickly talk you through how to see your website. And then we're going to add these sections. So we're going to add a banner section, a card section, and a footer section with some content. When you're done, your page should look like this. Wowee, amazing. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed by how amazing HTML websites look. So let's get into it. So first things first, we've already prepared our files, so we can just click on index.html and you'll see our boilerplate. You can see doc type at the top. You can see our open and closing HTML tags. There's a little bit of data in our header, and there's a couple of things that are already done for us. So you can see there's a link to a style sheet which comes up for us. We can also see there's another link here which is to do with fonts and supplying some fonts to us, and I'll give you some more information about that later. For now, we're going to use our knowledge of headers, paragraphs, and the other HTML tags, images, to add the content we need onto our website so it looks as amazing as our example we saw somewhere around here. It's gone, I've lost it. Find it again. So, step 1, let's add a banner section with a H1 with the name of our product and service. We're going to add a P tag underneath with our tagline, and an A tag with our call to action redirecting someone somewhere. Okay, so you can see on line 13, we've got banner section described for us here. So let's go add a line underneath, and we're going to add a H1 tag. Now, the reason we use code editors is because they have all these lovely tools to support us. So rather than typing, arrow H1, closing arrow, as you already see there, that finished it for me. But even simpler than that, I can just type H1 and press enter, and it'll add that for me. So I am going to cheat a little bit and copy and paste the text from our example page. So in our H1, I'll have change your life, learn to code. We also need a P tag for a paragraph, and we'll have in there we'll have Wagon brings technical skills to creative people. And we also need an A tag with a href of, we'll go to, as I learned, it's not .org but .com. So I'll put https www.lewagon.com, and we will give it some content that says learn more. Lean more. As you'll learn as we go through this, I will make a lot of spelling mistakes. I'll try to catch them. Jump in the comments if you see some. But be nice,
Are people not always nice?
Well, I mean, most of the time. You might see here that some code here is auto-completing. I use a plugin called GitHub Copilot, which is like an AI coding tool. So this is really convenient. It might speed up some sections. Most of the time, I'm going to ignore these suggestions. So if you want to view your website, we've added a little bit of content. So let's see how to view it. So if I go to my folder, open that up, and I double click on index.html, that's going to open up a browser window. Okay. Every time I make a change, I will save. So if I add something here in the card section and just put, H2, locations. If I add some content, I save the file, I return to my internet window and refresh the page, and you'll see that appear. Just to make things smoother for myself as we do this, carry on using that workflow. I'm going to use a plugin called Live Server, which will automatically update this for me every time I save. So again, I'll try and remind you to save. This is a really common error that comes up when we do live workshops. So I'll remind you to save and refresh your pages. So yeah. So in our card section, we're going to add a H2, an image, and a H3 to describe the image above. I'm going to repeat this 3 times. So we're going to have 3 cards. If we look at our example just here, we've got our 3 cards, and I'm going to change this title to say some of our campuses. And I'm also going to change our button to say apply now. Okay, so some of our campuses, so H2, and for each card we have an image with a source and an alt. We have a H3 with a location, and we have we have an image and a H3 for each card. Okay, so for our first one, we're going to look inside the images folder. If you look on your left, and you can see there's a background image, there's London, Paris, Shanghai. So this first one, we'll put in Paris. We'll do images. We're going inside the images folder, images, and you notice VS Code's helping me out here by suggesting the route here, and I can just navigate with the up and down arrows to the image that I need. And we want to repeat this 3 times. So we'll also have a London. So if I just look, I'm going to change one to say london.jpg or JPEG, and we'll change the H3 to London. And we will also have one Shanghai.jpg and Shanghai. Awesome. Once I've done that, and this is really important if you're getting into coding, make a small change and check the output. With HTML and CSS, it won't give you errors. Okay, something may not work, so we can see all of our image. It won't give you errors. So the good thing is to make small changes, see if it works, and adjust until it looks like you want it to look like. Excellent. So we've got our cards information there. And the last thing on our challenge was to add, a P tag in our footer section. So let's do that. I'm going to copy this because I still don't know how to make emojis with the standard keyboard. So if you want to have a website made with love at Wagon or by whatever your name is, you can copy and paste that little heart from there or from somewhere else on the internet. So in our footer section, let's add a P tag and paste. Okay. So if we save that now and go and have a look at our amazing website, circa 1995, we can see all of our content here. And notice a couple of things. Our H1s are the biggest content on the page. The P tag is more of a standard size. The A tag, again, if you're as old as me, you will have remembered some websites where this was the standard for a link. Underlined, it's purple or blue.
It's Tumblr.
Pardon?
Tumblr back in the day.
Tumblr
Every page was like this.
That absolute gold, the golden days. MySpace. Getting a bit nostalgic, tearing up here. Our H2, again, smaller than a H1, but still bigger than our H3s for Paris, London, and Shanghai. And again, that standard size for the P at the bottom. Excellent. So let's continue. Hopefully everyone's doing well with that. If you're having any problems, let me know in the comments. Okay, so let's look at some CSS basics so we can start adding some design to our page. Now that we have our content, we can start making this feel a little bit more natural. So CSS is the design element. So as we said before, HTML is content and structure. We've learned how to add that. CSS is design. How do we make this more user-friendly? How do we make this more attractive? How do we make this more smooth? So the first thing we need to do is link a style sheet. And obviously we're not going to display this link in the content. This is part of our metadata in the head. So I mentioned this before. You will already see this in your code, but you'll see this link tag here, which is another tag that doesn't have a closing tag. So along with image, we've now seen link that doesn't have a closing tag. And we have two attributes, rel, which is, I don't remember what rel's short for, but it describes the content that we're looking for, a style sheet. And href, similarly to an image, this is describing what we're looking for. So if you look in your file explorer on the side, the stylesheet.css is not inside a folder. So from index, it's just going to look around index and find style.css. If you put style.css in another folder, you'd have to do the same thing like images and maybe look inside the styles folder and find style.css. But fortunately, we don't have to do that for this one. So, and that's how we link our style sheet. So in our style sheet, we're going to set some rules. We're going to set some CSS style rules. And they may look like this: H1, color, red, and that would select every H1 on the page. It's going to analyze that HTML, find all the tags that say H1, and add it and change the color to red. So let's check this out. Let's use Wagon's website, which has been painstakingly designed into something beautiful. What does that look like without CSS? So as we learned earlier, let's go to Wagon.com. And let's ruin their website. So again, if we go to inspect, we can make changes to a website. These are not permanent changes. This doesn't change the source code, but we could go inside the head and we could disconnect the CSS. So just for the sake of speed, I'm going to delete the whole head. Okay, and what this does, and now we can see the glory of Wagon's website without CSS. How beautiful is that? Everything is like vertically aligned. Yeah. All of our buttons have reverted to this natural blue underlined glory. And you can see here there's an unordered list of buttons: France, Europe, Asia Pacific, Americas. Let's refresh the page. Again, because this isn't permanent, when we ask the server again for the information, we get everything back. So if you go into inspect, you can play with this stuff, make changes, and then just refresh the page, and we get all of the information as it was intended. So let's see if we can find that list of locations. It's going to be more difficult than I thought.
It's normally in a tab, I think.
Is it normally in a tab?
Yeah.
Yeah, locations here. Wonderful. So that is this here. So the amount of work our CSS does is huge. So this is the makes such a difference on every single website. Good work, Zareen. I was freestyling then, so yeah. Okay, great. Wonderful. So CSS syntax, we have a selector, and that selector could be the name of a tag, or it could be a couple of other things that I'll let you know about later, called classes or IDs. And inside, you'll have a style rule, and each style rule consists of a property and a value. You can have as many style rules as you want within each selector. And here's a good example. So this first example is a H2. We're selecting every H2 on the page, and we're saying the color for each H2 should be red. The font size should be 24 pixels. CSS is really useful for colors as well, as we've just seen. So here we've said color red. Now this is this example here of saying something color is red is not used a lot in practice because it's not very flexible. Like, how many reds are there in the world? I know I can be quite simple at sometimes, and red is red. But when it comes to web design, you can't do that. You can, you can be a lot more descriptive than just red, yellow. And these are preset colors. So how else can we use colors? So, like I say, color red, orange, but also we can use hex code, which is a lot more detailed. And as we change these letters and numbers, we can get the different shades between them. We can also use RGB, where we describe the mix of red, green, and blue in that order. So 255 would be all of the red, green would be, and 0 would be none at all into the mix. So imagine having an empty bucket and a pot of red, a pot of green, and a pot of blue paint, and you're going to decide how much of each pot to put in to create your color. And there's another one we can use, which is RGBA, which is the same as RGBA, but we have this extra value, which is alpha. And this basically is transparency. So 1 is fully there, solid, and 0 is invisible. And all the points in between describe how visible you want something. So this is really good for layering things. This is really good for shadows. All of these colors are orange, but they're all expressed in different ways, which may be useful in different contexts. Here's a really, really cool trick: grayscale. Grayscale is used a lot in web development for displaying text and making sure things are readable. If all the numbers in RGB are the same, it will be somewhere on the grayscale between black 000 and white 255 255 255. So if you pick a low number, it's going to be a dark grey. So 30, 30, 30, as you can see on the right-hand side here, is a dark grey. 230, 230, 230 is a very light grey. Font family, this is really important, or as most people will think of this as fonts. I'm sure everyone in school did an essay, picked Comic Sans just to bring some levity, just let everyone know they were creative.
The go-to.
Absolutely. We can do this with our CSS, and we can do that with the font family property, and the value that we can put in could be something like times serif. Now, when we say serif is any font with like little tails at the end of the letters. We can also use sans serif without serif. Essentially, that translates to from possibly the Latin. Could be another language. I think it's Latin though. I feel confident about that. Yeah, we'll go with Latin. Yeah. I sound smart if I say that. So if you see a font without the little tails, that is a sans serif font. And our last one is monospace. So monospace, all the letters are the same width, which may not be the same with sans serif and serif fonts. But very much like typewriter style, I always think with those. So font size and spacing. We can use a font size property to describe the size for like the height. We can use line height for the space around the text as well. So if we say the font size is 30px and the line height is 1.6, we're creating a little bit of space around that. And letter spacing, we can then play with the space between each letter and sort of express ourselves through that. We can use font weight to describe how thick the lines are, essentially. So when we've used, I'm going to relate this back to Word again, when you click bold, you're going for a heavier font weight. So our font weights run from 100 to 900. So imagine clicking that bold and it goes from 100 to 600 to make your point. And again, this sort of links back to that strong tag that we brought up before. It increases the font weight to emphasize a point. But we can also describe font weight in different ways. We can say lighter. We can say bold. We can say bolder. We move into text decoration and alignment. So the classic A tag that it always takes me back whenever I see those when they're unedited. Something every web developer does a lot is they'll write this little bit of code and take that underlining off their links. So we use the text decoration none to remove that underlining. But if you wanted to add more, you can. There are other options to explore. With text, similar to Word, those three buttons that we're all super familiar with the lines sort of aligned to the left, center, and to the right, we can do the same. So we can text align center. We can justify, which makes the text fill the space. And there are more options to this that you can explore. So let's add our first CSS rules. There's a little thing here. I'm going to very briefly show you Google Fonts. In our code already, we've provided the link you need to have exactly what we have in ours. But just for now, I'm going to show you how Google Fonts works. So we go to Google Fonts. You can browse all of these fonts, and as you're shopping, you can have a look and you could select, for example, this one. Wonderful. And in the right panel, you can see there's a link here. So this link tag is for HTML, and there's also a way to import directly into the CSS, and it will give you the code just to copy and paste straight into your code. So if we wanted to use this one, for example, we could copy and paste this where? Into our head, because this is metadata. So we can copy and paste this into our head. Excellent. not even sure what that was called. Let's go back, and we can use this rule. It even gives us the CSS rule to use. And if we go to our style.css, let's just, as an experiment here, I'm going to change the H1. So I start with my property, my selector. Wonderful VS Code is making suggestions, but we can ignore that, and we're going to copy and paste the code from Google Fonts, and hopefully, all going to plan, on our title will now be this crazy climate crisis font. So let's have a little look-see. Look, wonderful. How beautiful is that? So this is really, really powerful. There are so many fonts on here that you can explore. Again, for the purpose of this, I suggest not doing it now, but after we've done this tutorial, go back, explore these fonts, personalize it, and make this your own. Make it feel really special. So I'm going to remove that, not because it's not beautiful, just because. Okay. Excellent. And I'm just going to remove the extra style sheet stuff from here because we don't need it. A little tip for any of you budding coders out there: try to remove any unnecessary code from your projects. We have lots of ideas in the creative process, so removing that as you go is super helpful. Okay, so what we'll do next is we're going to click on our next challenge. So next challenge is super easy. Add nice fonts and colors. We're going to copy and paste this CSS code into style.css so we can see what each property does. And it's already there for you, but check out the structure of that link. And if it's not there, you can copy and paste this and put it into your head if you've accidentally deleted it or something like that. So we're going to copy and paste this, and we're going to see what difference this makes on our website. So in style.css, I'm going to paste this. So before we look at it, let's just have a look at what we've written. We've got body, which if we look at we've selected the body tag. If we look at our HTML, we can see body is here, and that is all of our content. So this rule applies to all of our content. The font family is Overpass. The color is a gray, and the font size is 18 pixels. We've selected multiple selectors here. So here's a little technique. You can use commas if you want everything, multiple tags to have the same rule. You can use comma separate. You can separate them with commas for this to activate this rule on multiple things. So we have said for all the headings that we use, we've in our code here, we've got a H1, we've got a H2, and we've got 3 H3s. They're all going to have the same font. And then we've added some rules for the links. So for the link, we've said the color will be this blue, the font weight is going to be bold, there'll be no text decoration, and there's this lovely rule here, transition 0.3 seconds. Interesting. So we also see another one, which is A:hover and a different color from our first A. And what this is saying is when you hover over a link, change the color to pink, and that transition from blue to pink should take 0.3 seconds. So it'll be hopefully quite smooth. I'll try and show you guys now. So let's have a look at our lovely website. And as you can see, straight away, our fonts have changed. We've lost our underline on our buttons. We're starting to look professional. Employers are already knocking at the door. This is momentous right now, changing the game. And look, as I hover over this, really smooth transition. It's a very subtle thing, but if I remove that line, we have this harsh transition, which I'll I'll try and, can I make this bigger? Control, Command, let's make this real big. Okay, so make it really big. That, straight away, as soon as I'm on it, blam, pink. And again, subtle but important. So as you might see here, I commented this out. So in every language, there'll be some kind of syntax to add comments. In CSS, you can use this, like /*, and then you can end your comment with */*. And that code will be deactivated, or if you wanted to write a bit of information, you can do that. The shortcut for that is on a Mac is Command // and it'll do it, and it'll toggle that for you. Again, a little bit of wisdom. I don't use Windows, so I don't have the answers for you Windows users, but I still love you, don't worry. So let's make this a reasonable size once again. I think that seems legit. Lovely. And we have our smooth transition. That's our next little exercise. We're going to actually jump back to a little bit more detail on HTML, I believe. So if your website's looking like this, fantastic. If it's not looking like this, stop. You can review this. This will be available online. Go back and have a look at the information in your challenges so far. But you're all doing amazing. This is fantastic. So div structure. Div is not the playground insult that we all thought it was. Div is about dividing our page into different sections. Every website is made of divs. Any of you somewhat experienced developers out there, if you've done a little bit of learning online, you might have learned about semantic HTML, which is a bit more descriptive than using divs. This is entry level, and what we really want you to understand is the box methodology, and understanding how that websites are made of all of boxes. So we're not going to get into semantic HTML. If you're interested in that as a concept, please Google it. Do a little bit of research. It's really good. It's really good practice. But we're not going to be covering that today. So everything on a website is a box, regardless of how curvy and wonderful and lovely it is. It's a box. So as you can see, the nav bar here actually is a div, and that div is describing a box. So we have a box for our nav search bar area. We have a box for our lettings. So this is like an Airbnb. This is Airbnb, actually. We have another box for the map. But within those boxes, we have more boxes. Each card is a box. And just to come back, within that, there are even more boxes. So each bit of text, that's a little box. Each image is a little box. And visualizing the elements on your page as boxes is really, really helpful. So just as like an exercise, if you want to design a website, draw everything as squares. Even if it's a circle, you can draw a square and draw a circle inside it for like an avatar image or something like that. But start considering all of these things as little squares or little rectangular shapes, four-sided shapes. So div, width and height. Jumping back into some CSS. We can describe the width and height of a div explicitly with the width property and a value in pixels, and height also a value in pixels. Now I recommend with this sticking with, on your website, there are lots of different units that you can use. If you do a little bit of research into this, you'll see, you can use pixels, you can use centimeters, you can inches, you can use EM, rem. Just pick whatever you're comfortable with and kind of stick with that for your website to help with consistency and understanding what you're doing. So obviously width is how wide, height is how high. Margin and padding, these are really, really important for creating space and good design. So margin, you can use the property margin. Again, we're going to stick to pixels for now, and padding. So you see padding has two values here, and this is really important because here we're saying I want 10 pixels padding either side on the x-axis and 20 pixels padding top and bottom. So our CSS is looking at how we've written the code here and saying this first value is going to be the x-axis, this second value is going to be the y-axis. Lovely jubbly. So margin talks about the space outside of our div. So if we have a div and we want to make sure the things around it don't encroach on its space too much, we can add margin. If we want to make sure that there's space inside the div around the text, we can add padding. You'll see this a lot on buttons, for example. You don't want the text going right to the edge of the button, so we use padding to create a bit of space around that button. And then you might have a certain section that you want to have make sure the other elements on the page don't encroach on it, so we use margin. Borders, super important. There's a lot of cool things to tell you about borders. So this border property is really interesting. So the first thing we describe in the border property is the thickness of the border. So here we've said 1 pixel. Then we describe the type of line, so solid. There are other line types that you can look into. And then we say the color. So here we've said yellow, but you can still use RGB values or hex codes or RGBA. Border radius. Again, this is something you'll see a lot. This tells us how to make things curvy. So you could like circular avatars and stuff like that. This is all using borders. If you have buttons that don't have dead square edges, we can soften those hard edges using border radius. So it's lovely, very simple. Border dash radius as our property, and then a pixel value. Some really cool tricks with this. So if we want to make sure something's circular, we can use 50% as the value. So rather than pixels, we use a percentage, and that will make any square a circle. Box shadow. This is a controversial one. So here is this example is good for understanding what box shadow is, but please never, ever do it like this on your websites. Box shadow creates just a little bit of shadow to emphasize something. So we can use box shadow, and the first two values are sort of this shadow that we create, where is it going to be located? So in this example, 10 pixels to the right and 20 pixels down. And then we have a spread value, which is like how far is this shadow going to spread out? And then we have a color, which in this instance is blue. So I highly suggest, if you're going to use box shadows, much more subtle, something like 1 pixel, maybe 5 pixel spread, 10 pixel spread. And that color doesn't have to be just blue. It could be an RGBA value where you can use transparency to make this look more subtle. We'll see examples of this later. So next exercise, nice simple one. We're going to add some divs to our website. This won't change what our website looks like, but this is preparing us to be able to work with it easier and make our CSS better and get closer to our end goal of this amazing landing page. So if we go to our challenges, we can click on number 4, and we're gonna divide our pages using our divs into sections. So we have a div that's going to surround our banner section. We're going to have a div surrounding our campus for each campus card. So that's 3 divs, 1 for each campus card, and a div for wrapping the whole section all together. That includes the H2 title. And then we have a final div for the footer section. Does that make sense? I'm asking the question. I can't hear you, and that's okay. Just so you know, that is okay. No, I would never tell you how to feel. We're all friends here. So we're going to surround our banner section, and we've got these lovely comments to help know where the boundaries are here. So we can do a div tag here. So if I can type div and enter, and I get my open and closing tag, and then what I would do is just drag and drop that. Now, as you can see, this doesn't look very good. It's not very easy to read. So our nesting is really important to keep our code easy to read. So I'd tab that, and then the contents inside, I can just select that and press tab, and it's now nested and really easy to see. We have our div tag and the contents that's nested inside. Okay. I'll do the same for the entire card section. So I'll make my div. I'll grab that one, drag it down here, tab, select all the content I want inside the div, and tab, so I can clearly see where what's nested inside what. And the real advantage of that you'll see here now, where I put the div, and now I've got a div nested inside a div. We really need to keep that clear just in case we have problems and we need to debug that. And it's really clear to see, okay, I've got a div here. Let's do that again for the others. And hopefully the sections of what we've made are starting to become really clear as far as their purpose and the div. I was going to say divination, but the division. This is not Harry Potter. Shout out to magic. It is kind of magic. Definitely shout out to all the Slytherins out there, and the rest of you, of course. Okay, cool. So we've done all our cards now. Hopefully you're following along, squinting at the screen, and if you can see that, I'll try and create a bit more space on the screen here so you can see exactly the different sections that I've made. And your browser doesn't read the white space, so if it makes it easier for you to read creating this space, do it. If you want to add extra comments in like this, you can add a comment in saying card 1. That's absolutely fine. Whatever makes things easier for you to understand your code is always good. Okay. Now I was just using that command / shortcut to create those comments really quickly. Again, that might be control / in your Windows computers, but I'm not 100% sure. Hopefully someone will be in the comments advising you wonderful Windows users on your shortcuts. And again, I've got a div for the footer. So that's the end of exercise number 4. Let's return to the lecture. Wonderful. So we've done all of those divs, but for what purpose? If we look at our website, it's exactly the same. Exactly the same. But this has set us up for our next very important section. So ID and class. This is naming elements for custom design, and this is how we make something as powerful and as beautiful as Wagon's website. So how do I resize just a logo? How do I select a specific element only? In this example, you can see there's an image with a source attribute of logo PNG, and we have a list. Inside that list, we have a bunch of images with sources of different Beatles. So I'm going to presume we have a list of images of the wonderful Beatles. Paul, Ringo, John, and George's. So in our style.css, we can say image width 100 pixels. Now what this will do is every single image tag on the page will have a width of 100 pixels. But what if we don't want that? What if we want to have just our list images styled in a certain way, or just the logo styled in a certain way? We can add an ID tag. And in our CSS, we can use the hashtag to say, look for an ID. So if we use hashtag, it's going to look through our page and find an element with an ID attribute with the word logo as its value. So because we have the ID here, ID attribute and logo, it's only going to select the element with an ID of logo and set the width to 100 pixels. Now it's not checking the tag. It's going to look, if this wasn't an image, it would still find that tag by the ID. Wonderful. This is really good practice. And if you're using an ID is something you're only going to use once on a page. So for example, a logo in the top corner, if that's the only time you're going to have a logo and you want it to be that size, and you want this rule attached to it, use an ID. Now, if we wanted to have multiple images with all the same style rules, like this example, our staff that work for us, the Beatles, we're going to display all their images the same. Like you've been on lots of like about my business pages and seen all the staff members and their amazing like LinkedIn profile pictures, their eyes are glistening. And we want those all styled the same. That might be circular, that might be the same size, whatever. We're going to do something slightly different. And we're going to use class. So we're going to use the attribute class equals and whatever the name. So in this example, it's image-circle. And in our CSS, rather than a hashtag, we use a dot, a full stop, a period, wherever you're from, you know what I mean. This little dot here. And if it says dot, it's going to look through our page for class attributes that have the value of the name that we describe here in our selector. So again, this is not going to look at the tag. This is not looking for image tags. This is only looking at the classes that have the name image circle, and it's going to apply our border radius 50%. And if we remember from earlier, if we use border radius 50%, it's going to make our content circular. Wonderful. Great practice. So just to recap, an ID is a unique adjustment and a class is like a reusable design, something that we want to have uniformity. And big complex websites, this is so useful. This is so powerful. If you wonder why everybody's Facebook profiles look the same, it's this. If it's, everyone's Twitter messages look the same, it's this. Tweets. I'm definitely sounding old. I don't use Twitter. Okay, so you will rarely use IDs. Most of the time, you'll be using classes. So as we say here, 90% of your CSS will be classes, 10% would be IDs, and again, some of that will be just tags. So naming conventions. When we're writing the names of classes, it's lowercase and I forget now. I'm going to say separated with dashes. I'm sure there's a term for this, but it's not snake case. So I forget what this one is. So lowercase everything, separate each word with a dash. Try not to start the names with numbers. So for example, text center, button red, list inline, all of these, we don't have any spaces. We're all using a dash to separate words, and it's always all lowercase. So the next thing is we're going to start designing the following elements, and we're going to add some classes. So this is when our website's really going to start looking like the website that we've been aiming towards all this time. Very, very exciting. So we can go to our custom design exercise, which is number 5. So for this part, you'll add relevant classes to your HTML file. So we're going to add a banner class, a button blue class, a card white class, a footer class, and a container. Once you're done, your page should look like this. Okay. Look how wonderful this looks. If you're not sure, you're not feeling very confident at this point in time, there's solutions here. So you can see in the solution that it's not any big changes in our HTML, but we're using this class here. Don't be afraid of going to solutions. If you're stuck with something, there's nothing worse than just sitting and suffering in silence. Go to the solutions, have a look at it. It'll bring some clarity. And do you know what? In practice, in my job, I'm constantly Googling the simple things like this. So, just crack onto it. I may even end up using it today if I forget something. There's absolutely no shame in looking at solutions, looking for answers. So let's do it. First things first, let's add some classes. So in our div tag, we're going to add attributes for the banner. So class equals inside speech marks banner for each of our cards. Now, for now, let's ignore the main div around the cards section and just go to each of our cards and say class equals, with no spaces, class equals card dash white. Remember, that's our naming convention. No white spaces here. We use dashes. And some brainy, wonderful person invented copy and paste. So let's not waste our time and let's copy and paste that 2 more times for the other card divs. And we need to add one here for the footer. Class equals footer. And now, just coming back to it, around the card section, we're going to use the container tag. So class equals container. So this is pretty cool. And just think about in terms of it's a container for other divs. So we might want to apply some rules that are going to help us display this later on. Wonderful. So once we've done that, we're going to start using these. So hopefully you'll all remember, let's start with a banner. So let's have a look at our final version. So we can see our banner has a lovely big H1. The text is white. The paragraph text is a little bit, let's zoom in here. It looks like it's a little bit see-through. We've got our link is blue with white text, and we have a hover transition from light blue to dark blue, and we have this background image. So let's do it. So if we do to select a class, we're going to do dot banner. I'm going to use my curly braces, and interesting. Let's set the background image first. So the tag for that is background image. And if you could see the suggestion here is saying URL. So with this tag, we need to give it a URL. We need to give it a path to find the image we want to use. Now, if we look in our images folder, we've been supplied with a background.jpg or JPG. So let's use images / background.jpg as our background image. And as we said earlier, let's make a small change and test it. Let's see what that looks like on our website. Wow, that is wonderful. So you can see it's now generating this background image for us, which is great. However, that doesn't look amazing yet. So we want to say, it looks like it's really big and we're only seeing a small part of it. So we want to tell it to make the background image fill the size of our div, of our banner div. So let's use background size, background dash size, and note that the CSS properties follow that naming convention, all lowercase, separated by a dash, and we say cover. And what that's telling it is to cover the space we've given you. So now that's a little better. Wonderful. So we said our text was white, so we can say for text color, it's just the word color is white. Lovely. And we had we have something on the, so if we look back at that now, we can see all the text is white, which is really cool, but we still have this same button here. But notice something else, our text is aligned in the center. So if we think back to some of our text stuff here, we can use text align center. Now we're bang in the center. Let's describe our button. So if we just wanted to, if we just wanted to change the link in the banner to look different, we can do this dot banner, and then we can say what tag we're looking for. So we could say A, and then say our rule. So we can say any link inside a banner, which is what this first section is saying. Look inside banner, find any anchor tags, and let's make our text color white. Wonderful, it's worked. Then we can say, let's have a background color. Just for the sake of speed, we're going to pick this blue here, which is lovely jubbly. And let's give it some padding. So, because that looks a little bit dry right now. So let's give it some padding. And 10 pixels by 20 pixels. So we'll see we've got a little bit of padding around the height and a little bit of padding either side. But this doesn't really fit properly right now, which is not the dream. And notice there's also a little bit of gap around the edge of our website. And this is because browsers have some standard style rules that come. So we can override that by just saying in the body, correcting that in the body. So I could say margin 0, and that will take away the margin from around the body. And look, we're going all the way to the edge now, which is fantastic. So this is going really well, but our banner is still feeling very stifled. So let's add some padding. So where we add padding, we're going to add some padding to the height, but because we've centered our text already, we don't need, so sorry, the first value is the Y value. So top and bottom is adding 100 pixels, but we don't need to worry about the X value either side, just because we've centered our text, so it's not super duper important right now. Wonderful. So look, we have a lovely banner, which is very nearly the same as our example. So, and one more thing, if you have a look here, we've got some border radius. So let's do that now. So we can add some border radius to our link of 5 pixels. And look, that softened our button and we're in line. We haven't done the hover state yet. So we can do dot banner, a hover, and then we can give it a, just for now, we've got a pink background color because we're a bit more zesty on Instagram Live. Look at that. Amazing. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So again, as you saw earlier, we have a colon hover for the different state. And we've done the same thing here. We still have, let's see if I can zoom in and show you this. We still have our transition isn't immediate. And that's because we still have the rule from earlier. So it's almost like it's going to take these rules, and this one is more specific. And if I give it a more specific rule, it'll override it. But if I don't give it a more specific rule, it won't override it. So if I wanted to override that transition, I could say transition 0 seconds. And now it'll be dead immediate and harsh. But because I've chosen not to override the original A tag rules, you don't need to. Cool. So we now have a banner that's there or thereabouts. Wonderful. So we could make text larger or whatever we want. Play with it. So for example, if I wanted to say H1 font size 50, I can do that here, and it will make my H1 nice and big, beautiful. And if I say wanted my my text, my p tag dot banner p, I want that to be a little bit see-through. Okay. Oh gosh, where have we gone? Excellent. So if I want that to be a little bit see-through, I could say color RGBA, and then give it some values and say we're still white, so it'll be 255, 255, 255. So we've loaded in our paint pots of red, green and blue, fully emptied them, we've got white, and we want it to be a little bit see-through. So I'm going to give it an alpha value, a transparency of 0.8, which will make it seem a little bit more subtle. Look at that. Amazing.
Beautiful.
Anna is overwhelmed by the beauty here. Cool. So now we've got a couple more bits to do. So what I'm actually going to do, just for the sake of time, is I'm going to copy and paste some CSS here, and I'm going to talk us through it rather than coding it live. So let's add in, let's add this in. Where are we? Oh, let's zoom out a little bit. Yeah, that's better. So we can see all of this, lovely. And wonderfully, the solution stuff here is just a straight replacement. So we've got our margin 0 trick here, our font family that we did earlier. We've set the colors for our headings, and we've set we've used this opacity tag here to set the all the paragraphs to be grey but also slightly see-through. Okay, our container, we've set it with a width of 800, and we've used the margin tag here, margin auto. So as you can see, there is we've got our banner. So we've used the background image for this is a slightly different solution here. So we're using linear gradient, and what that does is it adds a layer of color over the image. So we've put a slightly transparent black over the image to make the text more readable. So the syntax for that here is linear dash gradient, and then in brackets we're putting the same color twice, which is RGBA 000 for the blacks, and then an alpha of 0.6. You put that in twice, and then we also give our image URL. So if we go and have a look at that, if what I can do is sort of comment out the code and then activate it as we talk through it. So you can see the difference without being overwhelmed by all the changes. So let's have a look here. So look, as you can see, that's slightly grayer than before. If I remove that linear gradient, you can see it's just a little bit brighter. So excellent. We've used background cover, and we use background position center to make sure that we're getting the center of the image behind our text. We've given it a padding of that y-axis of 150 pixels and 0 either side because we don't need it, and then we text align the center. The same thing, we've done the same thing here, so we can activate this for our banner, for our text. Now, because we've said the P tags at the top are 0.7 opacity, now we don't need to describe it here, but we've just set inside the banner, the text is going to be a little bit bigger and it's going to be white rather than grey, as we've described at the top here. We've got our button blue, which is what we've done before, with our blue colour. We've got white padding, border radius to 4 pixels, so it's slightly different from where we said 5, and we are displaying that as an inline block, and we've got that transition. So as we hover, it's right, we change the colour. So I think now, before we look at the card white, let's have a look at that, and hopefully we'll see. Good. So the next little bit we've got is the cards. So if we look at our cards here, we can see we've called them card white because they have a white background. Our images have a slight little bit of border radius, and we have a nice big H3. And these are now like we've the same size and they have the same presentation, which is really cool. This one is, this is what happens when you've got the same thing open in lots of places. Good. So you can see actually we've got a little, we've got a little mistake in our, oh no we don't. Yeah, we've got a little mistake in our HTML, so our button isn't working right. And this is because I forgot to tell everyone to add the button blue class. So if we go to index, if we go to the index here, we go to line 17, or it's my line 17, it might be slightly different for you if you've organized differently, and put class equals button dash blue. And save that. We should see all of our problems go away. There we go. Look, our button's working perfectly. So now we've got our banner working perfectly. Let's make our cards look amazing. I'm just going to change this to something that doesn't keep tricking me to look at the wrong thing. Okay, so back to our style, and we're going to use, let's add our card white. So if we do this, so we've given it a background of white, and this is that box shadow that we were talking about. So now if we see, if you saw before, our cards were blending in with the background, but we don't want to give it a really harsh outline. So what we can do is add a bit of box shadow. So here we've said we don't want it to be off to the side or down anywhere, but we want it to have a spread of 16 pixels, and it's going to be black, 000 RGB values with a really low alpha. So just the slightest bit visible. We're going to give our cards a little bit of border radius, 4 pixels, like we've used further up in with our button, and this creates like visual consistency. It makes it much nicer to see. The standard width is going to be 200 pixels for every card. Our text will be aligned center. We're going to have 24 pixels of padding all the way around and 8 pixels of margin. So we've got a nice bit of space. So let's see what that looks like on our site. Awesome. Look at that. As you can see, our images are spilling over the edge, okay? But we now have our drop shadow, right? And our cards are standing out from the page. So how can we fix that? Let's have a look. So if we now set a rule for any image inside the card image, any image inside the cards, we can set some rules. So if we do .card-white, following our naming convention, and then we're looking for any image tag, we set the width and the height to be the same. So that's going to make sure they're square, and then set the image object fit. Now what object fit does, it says this image that we're putting in this space it needs to cover the whole space. So it'll resize it until it fills the space, but it won't stretch it in any way, so it won't make your images look really funny. And then we're going to give it that 4 pixels radius to give it that visual consistency. So let's have a little look-see. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Look at that. Perfect. So now, just like our example, we've got our cards looking amazing. And cool. So if we look back at our website, we can see, go away now, but we can see that our cards and our footer are like really close. So let's make a little bit of space there. So we can use, we can make a little bit of space at the bottom of our card, which is, we had a little bit of, so for the H3s we're removing any margin at the bottom, but we also need to have some space between the cards and the bottom. So we're going to give the footer a background, we're going to give it we're going to give it some padding, and like we said, that Y value comes first. So 24 pixels top and bottom, 0. We align the text center here. So and remove that. And then we have a text color of white that we say our paragraphs footer space P. So any P tag inside the footer, we give it a color value of white. Okay, so where are you? Lovely. No, didn't save that. So if you do what I just did and did not save, well, you might have some problems. Or we've got some other error. So if you look at the moment, we're having one of these like live moments where things are not working properly. Our rules that we've set on the footer for a background color of grey, and if you can see my screen, I've hovered over it and it's given me some really like lovely information. And I could just, if I wanted to change that color, I could move this around and I'll get it'll change the code to whatever color, but I digress. So we've selected the footer tag, but it's not actually appeared on the page. So this makes me think maybe there's an issue in our HTML. As you can see, class equals foots or footies. So it can't find, it's not finding it, so we're not seeing the changes that we want made. So I change that to footer now, and we go to our site. Lovely, perfect. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, so we've got one more exercise to go through before I leave you guys to make your own beautiful, wonderful personalizations. So our last step of the journey is this. Where are you? Everything's moved. Okay. So CSS grid. This is really useful. There are lots of ways to display grids on websites, but this is one I particularly like because it's just so simple. So you define your grid. So you could say cards, for example, and we set the display to grid. And this tells CSS that this grid rule is here, and there are certain properties that we can use when we're using the display grid. So we can say grid template columns, 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. If we put 4 1FRs, it will split our screen into 4 equal parts, and then we can use a grid gap to describe what the space is between those parts. If we use 3, like we have 3 cards, it will divide it into 3 equal parts. And when I say the space, that may not be the entire screen, but it will be the div that is surrounding, or the container surrounding the cards. Okay. So if, as you can see here, now what it will do is you can add as many cards as possible as many cards as you want. So if you added 1,000 cards, it would organize them all into the rows described. So in this example here, you can see 4 rows have been described, and as we keep adding them, it'll add them 4 in a row, and then it'll go down to the next row and the next row and the next row for as long as you want. So say if, like for example, if you're on Amazon, a very simple example of doing that is like a shopping website, and you're looking through all these items, and there's thousands and thousands of items, and they may be in a grid. Like I say, there's other solutions to this, but they may be in a CSS grid so that you don't have to worry about the number of items, and they'll all be organized in this uniform way. Lovely. Let's do it with our cards. So if I so we put a class container around here. We can let's add another div inside. And we'll call that div cards. So, and we want our cards to work in this grid. So let's do that. So we're going to do that same technique that we did before to surround our cards with this div. Let's do class equals cards. So now in our CSS, we can write .cards to access that div. So I'm just going to add this below the footer text. So if I do .cards, I can now add some rules, and we're going to add 3 rules here to finish this off. So the first thing is I'm going to do display. So ignore the suggestion here. Display grid semicolon. Again, I didn't mention this earlier, but if you look, all the CSS rules are closed with a semicolon. If you don't do that, it may create some problems, but it also may not. But it's good form to remember the semicolons. VS Code most likely will do it for you. So we're then going to add our grid template columns. So grid dash template dash columns, and then we have 3 frames. So we're going to do 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. Let's see how that shows on our site. Nice, look at that, beautiful. Or is it? So we're having a little problem here, but we've got 3 columns. So why are we having that problem? I think I know why. As I said, everything in all the tags are actually boxes. So where I put cards, I also put the title inside that div cards, and it's seeing that as a box, and it's setting them all. It's seeing that as a box, and it's setting them all as these square panels. So if I move that H2 outside of my cards div, just put it above on the line above. Let's see if this is displaying how we want it to now. Boom, look at that, beautiful. So already we've got that margin giving us some space in between, but if we want to, we can use grid gap to give it a little bit more space. So I can add in my CSS grid gap, say 24 pixels, and it will give us a little bit more space. Look at that. And then again, I think the footer is a little bit close here, so we could add some padding to our cards, padding. And we could say, let's say 50 pixels. And for the y-axis and 0, and we have a little more space. Look at that, lovely. Now we have a little bit of white space at the bottom here, and that's just because our page isn't long enough. So if we want to, we could add more padding, and then it's going to look a bit more natural. There you go. Made with love at the Wagon. So here, at this point, you should have a lovely landing page. And if you don't, feel free to go back and review those learning materials. You will have lifetime access to this stuff. So on exercise 6, it gives you a little bit more information on that. Again, there's HTML solution code and there's CSS solution code here. Feel free to use that. Do not suffer. There are 2 optionals that you can do. So one looks at responsive design, so making the web page respond to the different screen sizes you might use. So if I were to, I'm taking a risk here now, but if I were to make this smaller, do you see how the content changed? There was a point here where it said, this is too thin, I can't display this properly. And now the content's been rearranged in some other format. So a little bit on responsive design, and then the second optional is how to publish your website. And that's using GitHub, as I mentioned earlier. So hopefully you've all had fun and asked loads of questions in the comments. I've had loads of fun with you guys. And yeah, join the Wagon.
Wow, thanks so much, Craig. That was brilliant. I was actually coding along as much as I could anyway, so apologies to the TAs for my million tickets. But no, that was great, thank you. And I really hope everybody else enjoyed that as well. Just so you know, this session is recorded, so you can watch it back if you want to recap anything. And don't forget that you have lifelong access to the learning material that you've used today, so you can just keep playing with it, keep learning from it. Google new things you can do and just use it as your sandbox, definitely. So we're going to wrap up now. Thank you so much to everybody who's stuck with us. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think we've all enjoyed ourselves.
Yes, definitely. Thanks, Craig, again. I mean, it was really good to hear your insights during our Q&A, and I think I hear that quite a lot as well during interviews. So everyone who's sort of keen to understand more, definitely give it a go.
Definitely, yes. Don't forget that you can look on the Wagon website for any more free events that we've got coming up. And we also have a lot of on-campus events as well, which I'd really urge you to join, so you can just come and meet the team a little bit, get a sense of what life on the bootcamp can really be like. And of course, please don't forget that you can, of course, get in touch with Zareen at any time for any questions that you might have on the bootcamp. And last and final reminder, don't forget that we have a swag giveaway. So if you follow the steps on the links in the chat, you can win either some of our swag, our prime swag, which is honestly top class at the moment.
Everyone's asking for it, actually.
Everybody
Current students are asking for it.
I know. And we've also got 50 £100 voucher giveaways. So if you are interested in joining the bootcamp, you can get £100 off when you sign up. There's 50 of those lottery tickets to give away, and we'll announce next week who's actually won those £100 discounts. So good luck, and we will hopefully see you all soon. Thanks so much again.
So prior to Wagon, I was working at ASOS as a merchandiser for about 4 years. And then over lockdown, I started to learn to code, which then obviously led me to Wagon. And it was probably the best decision I ever made.
My name is Lola, and I'm a junior software developer at Patchwork Health. I joined Wagon because I wanted to develop my skills and move my career towards technology.
So before doing the Wagon Bootcamp, I worked in retail and merchandising for almost 12 years.
My name is Anne, I'm French and I've been living in London for the past 2 years, and I'm a freelance full stack developer. I come from a business background where I was studying business management and strategy consulting, and I was working first in consulting and then as a customer success manager for a software company.
Wagon gave me the foundation to look for employment with confidence.
I think the hiring tools have been great. You've got a dedicated careers team here who their main goal is to help you find your next position. There's this thing called the talent pool. Been able to put all of my information basically online for tech companies to review and potentially reach out to me.
The most rewarding part of the bootcamp was successfully completing, doing a career transition right after completing the course. So actually the support that I've gotten from the staff and the alumni since graduating has been extraordinary. But I'm actually working with an alumni now at ASOS. So I took the decision to take the product management career path, but the peers that I studied with have now become data analysts, data scientists, data engineers. One of the competencies that I gained from doing the bootcamp is that it enabled me to demystify some of the data science jargon and turned what used to be buzzwords into words that I'm confident using on a day-to-day basis and do my role as a product manager.
The Wagon prepared me really well for my career change, since he gave me all the resources and tools to become a proper full-stack developer and keep on learning on my own. And he gave me access to this huge community which can help you when needed.
The best bit of the bootcamp were the people. When you actually work with a team and you build a project from scratch, you realize how much you learn.
The alumni channels are also really, really useful. There's constant jobs that are being advertised on our Slack channels.
You know, during the bootcamp, we really all became friends, all became co-workers, and hopefully we'll keep that relationship going on for a long time.
My best bit of the bootcamp was the intensity and the amount of things you would learn in such a short time, in 9 weeks, and also all the great people I've met. So far I have 2 freelance projects. I'm working on a project management app for a charitable trust in France, and I'm working as a teacher for the Wagon.
Before I was a midwife, and in just 9 weeks I was able to find a job as a web developer. And the Wagon app gave me the opportunity to do that.
Anyone that's looking to do Wagon, just do it.